Okay, today we're going to start our shed design project in Autodesk Revit, and the first thing that I do whenever I come to this screen, this is the startup screen, I'm going to choose New. The default for mine is Architectural Template, and I'm just going to go ahead and leave that on there, and I'm going to say OK. And this will start a new drawing for me. There's all kinds of different things on this screen, so I'm just going to take a minute just to explain to you some of the things that are on here. These are basically called ribbons, and there's all kinds of different things that you can do within the ribbons. If I want to build, I use the build ribbon. There's a circulation one, a model, room and area. For the most part, the stuff that we're going to be using is over here under the build for this project. The other two things that I want you to notice, there's a properties box over here, and this will give the properties of whatever is selected. Right now, the view, or this blank screen, is selected, and it goes through and it gives you the properties of that. There's also a project browser, and within this drawing, we're going to have all different kinds of views. We're going to have floor plans, we're going to have elevations, we're going to have building sections. This is how you navigate through those different views. The next thing is these four little things here. Basically what these are like four cameras that would take a picture of the building and create another view from that picture. I don't want to get into great detail how they work right now. I'll explain that later. The big thing that you want to do right now is whenever you're doing your drawing, try to keep it within this area. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to experiment with my wall command. Whenever I come up here, I can choose all different kinds of walls. Whenever I click on that, you'll notice that my properties change. That's because it's a contextual menu. So whenever I click on something, things change. And I also have all this stuff that popped up. So without getting into great detail, I could literally come in and start drawing some walls. What I want you to understand about that wall is I just drew a basic wall, generic 8-inch. If I go down through here, there's all kinds of different walls that I could choose from. Right now, this is just the basic generic wall. If I wanted to, I could also, after the fact, come in here, select the walls, and I could change them. So at that point, I just changed all those walls. There's a little button down here. It says Visual Style, Hidden Line. If I change that to Realistic, and then I come up here and click on the View tab, and I look at my 3D view, that's realistic. That's basically the wall that I just drew. Again, if I highlight them, I go through and change them, that's a generic wall with no detail, and that right there you can see has all kinds of detail. That's a brick wall, has a lot of different things going on. So there's all kinds of different things that you can do with the walls. First of all, I'm in 3D view right now, and I did that by clicking on this little button here that looks like a house or like a shed. If I want to go back to my floor plan view, all I have to do is come over to my project browser and double click on level 1. Now right now, this building is supposed to be 8 feet by 10 feet. Right now it's 55 feet 6 by 50 feet 6. So it's quite a ways off. So if I wanted to, I could delete this and then redraw it. I could also pick up these walls and move them. The easiest way to do this is to select the wall that you want to move, or the side of the building that you want to change, and you'll notice whenever you do that, these dimensions pop up. So all I have to do is click on the wall and then come up here to this 29'6". Click on that and I can enter my own dimension. So I'm going to put 10. I could type in feet, but in Revit the default is foot. So now I have a 10-foot wall. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I want to move this wall over, so I click on it. I highlight the dimension, and I'm going to put 8. And now I have an 8-foot by 10-foot building. And if I look at this in 3D, what you'll see is that it looks pretty strange. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight these walls again, and I'm just going to pick something that's a little bit closer to what we have. The wall type that we actually have is not listed in here, so we're going to have to build it at some point. But I'm going to pick a generic 5. Still looks pretty goofy. And the big reason for that being so goofy looking, if I click on the wall, come over to my properties, it tells me that the unconnected wall height, if I stretch this out a little bit, the unconnected height of the wall is 20 feet. At this point, we don't know how high the walls are going to be. We know they're probably not going to be 20 feet high. I could click on the wall, and I could change this to 12 feet. I can also hover my cursor over top of the wall, click the tab button, and it selects all the walls. And at this point, I could change them all to 12 feet. And I could do that again. If I don't want them 12 feet, I could hover, tab, click, and let's change them to 10 feet. Now it's starting to look more like what a shed should look like. So we basically just learned how you can change your wall height by using the properties. We could change these walls to 10 feet, 12 feet. It seems to be a pretty easy thing to do, but what happens whenever I have more than 4 walls? Let's say I had 120 different walls in here that I had to select. Now all of a sudden it becomes more difficult and more time consuming to change the wall heights. I have to literally select all these different walls and then go over and change the height, which would take a little bit more time to do. So another option that I can do, if I select these walls and I look at my properties, above the unconnected height, there's a top constraint. Right now, it says unconnected. I could go to this and choose up to level 2. Say apply. And what that basically does is it connects these walls to level 2. You guys don't even know what level 2 is at this point. So the best way that you can see what level 2 is, if I go down through my project browser and I look at east, north, south, west elevations, and double click on one of those, this is basically the picture of the building looking at it from the side. So this would be the north wall. And what you can see is that it's connected to level 2. It could be coincidence that it's going up to level 2. But the way that you can really tell for sure is if I come over here and select this level 2, and I collect the dimension, click on the dimension, you'll see the 10 feet pops up. I'm going to change that from 10 feet to 5 feet. And what you'll notice is that the wall height changed because it was connected to the level. And if I look at it in 3D, you'll notice that the wall height changed for all the walls. That's because they were connected to level 2. This gives me a lot of flexibility. If I set the walls to connect to a level and I don't know what the height of the building is now, or if I want to change it later on, I can very easily and quickly change the height of the walls with minimal amount of work. So we basically learned how to connect walls to levels and then adjust the levels, the level height. What you can also do, if I look at my elevation view, which is just a picture of the side of the building, I could come in here, I can add levels. Stretch this over a little bit so we can see it a little bit better. And use my wheel to zoom in. If I wanted to, I could create another level. And I can do that by clicking on the level button up here. On the architecture tab. And I could come in and I could make level 3. Level 4. And now I have several levels. And what it also does is whenever I create those under the floor plans, now I have level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. So I could real quickly and easily design a building that has multiple levels. So just for fun, I'm going to go back to level 1. I'm going to get rid of those walls. I'm going to pick a architectural wall, and I'm going to choose this brick on CMU. And I'm going to connect it to level 2. And I'm just going to draw some random walls in here. Not really worrying about what I'm doing, what I'm creating. So there I have some random walls. Then I'm going to throw in some windows here and there. I'm going to click on that wall, and that wall. And that's another way of selecting. If I want to select multiple walls, I can click the wall, hold my control button down, select another wall, and then select another. I'm going to change these walls to storefronts. And whenever I do that, you can take a look at the view. And that's what it did for the storefront walls. They're basically a glass wall. I'm going to come over here to these. I'm going to delete those other levels. And I'm going to change level 2 to be 14. Just so it looks a little bit better in my 3D view. go back. Stretch these back out. I'm going to select level 2, and I'm going to click this little button called Array. This works very similar to the array in AutoCAD. It asks me for a number of arrays. I'm going to say 14. Hit enter, and then it asks me for a dimension for the array. I'm going to make those 14 feet, and basically it made 14 more levels for me. Now I'm going to stretch this out a little bit. Now I can go through and I can make copies of these walls. So if I go back to level 1, I can select the walls, and I can come over here, copy to clipboard, and under paste I can assign to selected levels. And I'm just going to select all the levels except for the first one and say OK. It's going to take a minute to think. It's basically copying all those walls to all those different levels, and what I end up with is a pretty cool little building in a matter of a minute or two. That's just something to play around with so you can understand levels a little bit better.